Welcome back to the marketplace. This is the NBL's look at the free agency period, and the news just continues to roll on through. We've got a bit to talk about in this episode. I'm Jack Heverin alongside the best newsbreaker in Australian basketball, hands down, Olgun and Jack from ESPN.com.au. Olgun, a flurry of activity with the New Zealand Breakers. That's where we're going to start today, and they've got a history of having next stars and making it work, and they've added another one.
They have, Jack. Mantas Rubštavičius, 6'6", lefty shooter out of Lithuania, joins New Zealand Breakers as a next star. They've had a really good history of bringing in really quality next stars and developing them in a really elite way, and that's the expectation with Rubštavičius as well. Led last year's under 20 Euro championships in scoring. Has a really good feel for the game, sneaky athleticism, really smart player. Still has some size to add to his frame, but the skill set is there, the shooting is there, and they think that he's someone who can come in and make an impact right away.
I think that's the interesting thing with this particular signing for New Zealand, is that they are looking at him as a player who can come in and play a role, much like Rayan Rupert was in the previous season. This is not a young guy coming in who's going to start at the end of the bench. Mody Maor seems pretty keen on adding this guy to the rotation straight away.
And we're at a point, Jack, where we can put trust in Mody Maor and his system and his processes, not just to incorporate a guy like Rubštavičius into the rotation and have him be a part of winning basketball, but also to develop him. Right now, he is a mid-second rounder. He's hovering around that area, and I think that they have really good processes in place over there in New Zealand, and they're adding to their resources as far as from a coaching perspective and beyond to really be a place where you can go there and develop. And the hope for them is that he can rise and get into that first round.
So with the Breakers, you reported last week that Mango Matiang has signed with the team. That is now formal. That's been announced in the last couple of days. There's a one-in, one-out scenario. Tell us more.
Yeah, I teased this last week, the flurry of roster activity that's going to be going on in New Zealand, and this is what it is. So what I'm told is that Tom Vdanovich has requested a release from the Breakers. He received a pretty significant offer from a team in the Philippines. The Breakers, of course, had a desire to keep him, but didn't want to hold him back and handcuff him from a pretty immense monetary offer over in Asia. And so they have granted that release. They've allowed him to go. And so Vdanovich won't be on the Breakers roster to start the season. I'm told that when that season ends around January, that if Vdanovich does have a desire to play in the NBL for NBL 24, the Breakers have first right of refusal. And so he can't just go and sign anywhere. The Breakers have the first crack at him to sign him for the season, whether as a rostered player or as an injury replacement of some sort. And if they don't want him, then he can sign elsewhere. But as the season begins, Vdanovich won't be on the Breakers roster.
So that's Tom Vdanovich leaving the Breakers. Who's coming in to fill the breach?
So we'll have that hole in the front court in New Zealand, and I'm told that that'll be filled by Dane Pino. Played the last few seasons at Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. One of the most efficient rebounders in the NBL, really well known to NBL fans and NBL coaches. Good quality guy, great chemistry guy. He'll come in and help shore up that front court. Just a really quality backup big. And they get him for multiple seasons, Jack. That's a 2-year deal.
Well, it's great news for Dane and great news for the New Zealand Breakers. Let's go to far north Queensland, and the Cairns Taipans in the last 24 hours have added another young player to their program. Adam Ford is kind of like the uncle of all of the young players in Australian basketball, and now they're spreading their wings to a next star too.
Yeah, Adam Ford, one of the most interesting things in the press release, he says he has an obsession for this kind of player. So Bobi Klintman, Swedish big out of Wake Forest. He is 6'10", can grab and go, can shoot it. A really versatile big, and Fordy said it in the press release that the Cairns Taipans dropped, that he has an obsession with that type of player these days. It's similar to the mold of a Sam Wardenberg or a Sam Menenga or even AK Gak, where they basically have 4 big men locked up who are effectively positionless in the sense that these are guys who can all stretch it. These are guys who can maybe put the ball on the floor in stretches, that they can get the ball on the rim, really athletic. And so I think what 40 sees is 4 front court players who you can just mix and match. They can all play amongst each other, play with each other, and they still have an import front court player to add. And so I think that the expectation is that the Taipans are going to be a really, really tricky beat once again this season with Bobi Klintman coming in, just another really interesting plug and play guy in a really interesting system.
You start to look ahead of what teams are going to look like, and Cairns are one team a bit like Illawarra, Olgun, who are at the closing stages of building their roster for NBL 24. They're going to be fascinating. They're going to be unbelievable to watch, I think, because they're going to be so high octane, high voltage.
They're going to be fun. And with Taron Armstrong as the head of that snake, that is an expectation. The flip side is that they're going to be young, and so there might be some ups and downs with that group. But we saw last season, we called them young last season too, and they were able to overcome different sorts of obstacles, and they were able to finish at the end of games. They're able to overcome that. Whether they can do that this season with a 21-year-old point guard as opposed to a Shannon Scott, we'll see, but at the very least, they have really, really interesting pieces, and those pieces should all get pretty significant minutes too. I expect for us to actually see a Koldekak play basketball, to see Bobi Klintman play in really interesting areas on the floor. I expect to see Sam Wardenberg take another leap, and then I think it'll all revolve around Armstrong, and with his ability to pass the ball, distribute, to basically control the pace of a game, I think it'll be really fun in Cairns.
It's interesting sitting down and making some notes ahead of today's show about the amount of draftable prospects that are going to be in NBL 24. Now, you've got a great handle on this. A shout out to Liam Santamaria, who's the general manager of the Next Stars program, has done a brilliant job bringing Next Stars in. But it's more than just the Next Stars, isn't it? When you think about some of the other names who will be using NBL 24 as a springboard for their future.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So, we'll start with Armstrong, right? Armstrong signed a 2-year deal, so there is a chance that he could get to a point where he's draftable in the 2024 draft, but I think he's eyeing the 2025 draft. We just saw David Aquera put his hat in the race for the 2023 draft. Ultimately withdrew. He's with the Wildcats, and so he's hoping to use NBL 24 as a springboard to be drafted next season. And then you have this breadth of Next Stars, which I, again, credit to, like you said, to Liam Santamaria and to Jeremy Loliger for not just the amount of prospects that are joining this program, and not just the level of these guys, because we're talking about lottery picks to late second rounders, right? There's a really interesting range of level, but also the variety, right? You have Americans coming out of high school. You have Bobi Klintman is a Swedish big man out of Wake Forest. You got Mantas Rubštavičius, who's a Lithuanian wing, excuse me. So you've got just such an interesting array of players, and I get text messages from NBA teams every day asking, which stretch of the season should I come to watch? Where should I go? Who should I see? When am I going to come down? Which city am I going to be in? And so practically every NBA team is preparing to come to Australia at some point this season because the breadth of young talent is so wide.
It's going to be fascinating to watch NBL 24. It's going to be very young in a lot of teams, and that's going to be a lot of fun as well. Olgun, as always, great work by you. We'll start to take a little bit of a look at Summer League and what's coming up next week as well. But until then, keep up the good work.
Thanks, Jack.
And as always, thanks for being with us on the Marketplace. You can stay up to date with all the latest news and information right across the free agency period at nbl.com.au, all of the social media platforms, and following Olgun on Twitter as well. Until next time, thanks for being with us.